Hi, this is Tori Salvatore, and this is the final project. I was given pattern F. This is a preview of what mine looks like, all finished, and we're going to go through it right now. First, the provided instruction has given us a 4x4 square where each square is alternating colors and repeating the same pattern, kind of like a chessboard. This illustration shows the provided pattern given with the rest of my pattern to follow. What I did first was break everything down into the smallest function, and also we had to build up into the larger quilt as well. This was chosen in Indian red and light salmon as my colors. The chessboard comes down into lines, and each line is a function, which I will show in a few slides. The line then gets broken up into a quadrant tile, which is basically a 4-quadrant tile of the same pattern. That gets then reduced into a 1/4 of that is a full tile, and then a half tile is almost half of this full tile, with the exception of this 9th row L-shaped salmon color border. I started with the most basic function that we began the quarter with, the square. Then I built 2 triangles. I chose to do 2 separate triangles because this made it easier for me to call them later. All 3 shapes end in the same corner, and the only difference between the 2 is where the pen is. One happens to be on the right angled corner and one happens to be on the 45-degree angled corner. This will pay off later on. So the square, as I said earlier, we learned at the very beginning of the quarter. It's really a basic function. Then I go into the triangle, which is triangle A starts with a line and then goes into the hypotenuse and then ends with another line. One thing I did with the triangle is I used to square to the 1/2, or to the power of 1/2, which makes us not have to import the math function, just to give things a little bit more simplicity in here. Triangle B ends on the 45-degree. We draw the hypotenuse first and then come back around. This is the full half tile, or I guess the half tile, where there's a ton of range statements basically assigning each square and or triangle to a color. I've broken this down into the next few slides to make it easier to understand. The first row of squares basically calls every assigned color to its square by assigning color 1 and color 2. The second row is where we introduce triangles. Basically, as you can see here, triangle A and triangle B just get called without having any sort of pen movement or anything extra to deal with, which is why I liked doing it that way at the very beginning. To go back to the first function, basically to get to that next row, we snake down and start at the bottom of the next row on the bottom right-hand corner, and then move our way from 1 to 8. Once we get to 8, we just do a 180 of the pen and then start on with the 3rd and 4th row. Before I explain those 2 rows, I want to show that the triangles in these functions are just layered on top of the squares. That's another reason that having the pen start and end in the same spot as the square was convenient. It gave me a continuity that I really liked in these further functions. 3 and 4 basically are the same with different pattern assignments to build the rest of the middle of the tile. Just alternating between squares and triangles. And this is also a good illustration of how the colors change with each row and column. So, for example, the square has color 1 in part of it, and then the triangle that covers that has the second color in it. The full tile I am going to demonstrate in a minute. This will be the only run of the partial assignment that I'll do, and then I will run the full quilt at the very end. This combines both half tiles, and then what it does is bring the pen up and follow down 9 and over 9 to get that final border within the shape. And when we run this, it'll show a really nice you'll see how it mirrors and how it defines everything. So you can see the pen kind of snaking down nicely, and then I quickly pull the pen down to do a identical run of it, but upside down. Then the pen starts in this middle spot right here and comes up and does 9 squares by 9 squares to complete the quadrant. The quad tile takes the single quadrant that I just showed and multiplies it into a 2 by 2 square. This is not alternating in colors or anything. This is just a straight, multiplication of the same tile 4 times. Then we go into the alternating colors sequence, where we take that quadrant, the 4 quadrant tile, and we alternate that 1 by 1 in 4 times over. So one thing to note, this range statement goes from 1 to 5, as well as the the lines, there are 4 rows and 4 columns, and that can easily be manipulated into some sort of, if you want to have a bigger pattern, you can easily make this number a variable and have a +1 at the end of it, so that you can really define whatever amount of tiles and how big of a checkerboard you want at the very end. For the sake of this project and the scope of the assignment, I've chosen to keep it simple, but that's just a note for the end. The chessboard is a snake of all 4 of the 4 quadrants in the line, and it snakes down 4 times. And then we run the final code. Before I run it, I'm going to show you just what the code actually looks like, just to kind of give you a nice idea of what we're dealing with. So basically I've titled it, I've imported everything and commented out my YouTube link and the pattern. The beginning of every turtle is fairly similar. I've then moved the position of Alex's pen up into the corner just to make it centered for the display. I apologize, I have a little bit of a cold, Then at the end of the day, I put the tracer in here to make the final thing show up right away. However, I've commented out the speed, which has been helpful throughout creating the turtle. As you can see here are all of the functions that I've previously gone through. The square, the two triangles, the half tile, that's really long, and then the full tile that basically defines the rest of the shape, the rest of the checkerboard, the quadrant, the 4-quadrant tile, and then the line of that 4-quadrant tile and the chessboard. Everything alternates pretty easily. I've just called 2 colors and really just put every color in where I need it. There was nothing complicated about it. I didn't use the function where you could make color 2 equal color 1 or anything. I really just kept it straightforward, as this is really long and making it easy to edit in the end was a big deal. So the thing that's a little bit different with this is up here, I don't have a background on this like I did in the first test run of black, so it'll show up bright white. So brace your eyes. Ta-da! There it is in all of its glory. I've got everything alternating. It kind of looks like a South American tile or something, or maybe even Middle Eastern. It's really beautiful, and I like the colors that I've chosen. They're very pastel and, you know, gorgeous. Thank you so much. I appreciate the quarter and all of these exercises, and I'm looking forward to my next CS courses this summer. See you in class tomorrow. Hopefully this does the trick.